before I was 35, I did not make more in one single year than $20,000. And usually it was a lot less than that. Usually it didn't even qualify for tax, to have taxes looked at, because it was so low. And there's a lot of reasons why. You can learn about more in my book, It's About Damn Time, about why, or why I think. But we're going to start this part 2015 on. So this would have been towards the end of 2015 is when I got my first investor for Backstage Capital. And that changed my life, because they not only invested in the fund itself to make investments, but they invested in me to set up shop. So we'll start there. Okay. So it's been characterized, that time period, 2015 to 2018, by laying a solid foundation. Laying the foundation to be solid, but the journey was very rocky. One thing I did that I have talked about in the past is I sold portions of my equity in the Backstage Capital Management entity to just a handful of investors, to keep the fund itself afloat, but to also pay my bills and keep things going. This is not something that I enjoyed doing, because I knew how valuable it would be worth one day. And I had an understanding that it would be valuable, maybe not necessarily how valuable. And it felt to me like a new type of poverty. It felt like a new type of debt, and a new, it was different than being homeless. And I'll say that it's a kind of a luxurious problem to have, but it did feel like I was just going from one type of poverty and debt to the next. But I did it completely with my eyes open. No one tricked me. No one even persuaded me. I went out and I asked for this, because I knew that this was a sacrifice I was willing to make Backstage happen, and to kind of change my own life. So these weren't large amounts of money. This was enough to pay for the expenses of the fund and to pay my rent. So I did that. I also, anything that I had that I kind of sacrificed, I guess, and traded, went back into Backstage operations. And then I started thinking through, in these years, 2015 to 2018, what sort of other income streams I would have, because it became very clear to me very fast that it could not just be Backstage Capital in the way that I was building it from scratch, wanting to invest in hundreds of companies led by underestimated founders, and doing this in a way where I was not going to be getting some huge amounts of money from outside sources. This was a crucial time in understanding the value of sacrifice and vision. Selling equity wasn't just about surviving, it was about ensuring that Backstage Capital thrived. So then, but don't get too sad for me. I made these decisions, like I said, on purpose, right? So then in 2019, towards the end of 2018, Fast Company cover, to give you some reference. If you haven't seen that, you can look it up, but Fast Company cover was September, October of 2018. And my life changed. It absolutely changed, almost overnight. And so I was having different discussions when that happened. I was in different rooms once that happened. Once that hit the shelves for a month and was in every airport and every place you could see, the outreach from people was very different. 2019 to 2021, I made between $10,000 and $50,000 per event. This is after having incredible stage fright, which I talk about in my book and I talk about in other places. So just know that if you have stage fright, or if you think that speaking is not for you, if you think that paid speaking is not for you, and I can disavow you of that notion. Then I had podcast sponsorships that were about $30,000 per partnership, had a handful of those. And then book deals. Between those 3 years, I booked the $700,000 worth of deals for 2 books. Now they're paid in increments. So I have been paid completely for the first book, and I'll be paid more as I continue to sell. And then I have been paid a portion of the second book. But that's another story for another day. I'm not going to get it too granular with these, but just know that this was kind of the cumulative. Then consulting, I would consult with people 10 to 100,000. The 100,000 didn't happen in 2019 or in 2020, but it started happening towards the tail end of this time period that we're talking about. Then digital products in 2020, April of 2020 to be exact, is when I launched Arlan's Academy with one flagship course, how to raise capital from scratch. It was a few $100s at the time. Now it's free. But that began my journey of making, generating money from digital products in this way. And it's grown, and there's so much more to that. And then I did have salaries, not so much from backstage. I mean, I did have salaries from backstage, but it was in Runner, because I launched Runner in September of 21. But please note that my salaries just went back into the companies. There really isn't much to look at when it comes to that. So 2021 marked a significant milestone. This was the year I personally hit my first million. Let me say that again in case you were spaced out a little bit. In 2021 is the year I officially hit my first million. You may have even noticed I changed the introduction of my Your First Million podcast soon after. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I did change the introduction, and the song changed. I licensed the song, paid a few $1,000s to license the song from, I'm going to mess up his name, but it's Toby Inwigwe, I believe, but I'm probably saying that incorrectly. And he has a song called I Got My First Million, and I licensed the song to be able to use, which you can still hear in several of the more produced episodes of the audio version of Your First Million. But in that spoken word introduction, I say, like I used to say, when I started in 2019, I used to say, hey, and who knows, maybe I'll reach my first million on this journey. And then in 2021, I started saying, and yes, I did reach my first million. Here's how. And I talk about it, right? So that was a turning point. And I want to make sure everyone knows, especially if you're not watching, but you're not reading this, but you're listening only. It's worth noting that while this was a personal achievement, I had previously raised and generated millions of dollars for Backstage Capital. And I don't mean the management entity. I mean, I had just raised millions of dollars for Backstage Capital. Let me check this. Yeah, I got a hoo-ha in that in the Q&A. Thank you. Appreciate that. So then I would love to do this where it's not both pages. I can do that if I take it away from preview mode, I think. Okay, so let's get into 2022 to 2023. This is Consolidation and Growth. That I really want to point out that this is ups and downs, even though the trajectory overall is positive. So I talked about this. This is similar to what I said recently on Instagram. And I said this with an Amazon gig that I did, where I was paid to come and speak for Amazon last month. And someone asked me about ups and downs and about hearing no's. And I said that success is a series of multiple no's followed by one important yes. And then no, 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 no. And then one important yes, like a heartbeat. That's what I compared it to. And that is what this whole journey has been, from birth till now, and from 2015 till now. But 2022 and 2023 have really been that. But overall, if you were to pull back, you would see that it was this, but going up, but down, and then going up. And then overall, it would be going up, right? And so that's how you can start to think about your journey. Maybe here, like peaks and valleys, or it could be that it's here and going up a mountain slope, if that makes sense. And that's when you start to understand, like, you're never gonna be completely hockey stick. It's never gonna go straight line up. Just won't happen. But if you can see that it's going up, and then the lows are just a little bit higher than the lowest low, and it goes up, and then the low is a little bit higher than the lowest low, then you know you're on your way to something. You're getting very close to your first million. Okay. So I reduced operational costs. This was a mostly painful process. And what I mean by this is not fancy, but this is a really nice way, a pleasant way of saying that I had multiple layoffs. I had 2 rounds of layoffs at 2 of my companies. I'm proud to say, and you can give your opinion of that and have your opinion of my pride in this, but I'm proud to say that I believe we did it in the best way possible. I gave multiple weeks notice. I gave multiple weeks severance. I was kind with the news. I gave a lot of before I made the decision. I tried to empower the employees to bring in more revenue for the company, and it just didn't work out. And so those decisions were made, but I reduced the cost, and I say some of the pain of it too, not only emotionally with the people one-on-one with people, was when I announced, for instance, the layoffs at Backstage in summer of 2022. I mean, I got a backlash that I had, only a couple of times previously received publicly. And then a few weeks later is when the big tech companies started their mass layoffs, and people were, people were seeing how it can be done in a more cruel way, and that it had to be done in some cases. So, but moving on, because obviously I'm still dealing with that. But I introduced revenue from memberships, so Arlan's All Access. Many of you are in that. From intimate live events like my masterminds, some of you have been to those and experienced that. They've cost between $1,000 and $1,500 per seat, and I talk about that a lot in previous videos here. So in Spark and in Inner Circle. So check those out if you're not familiar. And then larger events like the one coming up April 9th through 12th, 2024, your first million live, which I know every single one of you will be at because you got tickets as part of your membership here, unless it's a cutoff date where we ran out of tickets. But right now, as of August 29th, I think we are, 2023, you all seeing this would have tickets in some way, shape, or form. And then major sponsorships that have started accompanying these events. So what you'll start to see me, I'll really dig in and dial in on the large events sponsorships. That is a next chapter for me in thinking through like major moves. So I'll get into that. You can ask me questions about it, for sure now, but I'll get in depth, just like I went in depth in the small events, smaller events. So my net worth has seen a steady climb. My net worth, and we'll talk about later, either on this video or this live, because I'm live right now, or the next one, if there's a part 2, which I am imagining based on how long it's taken me to get through the first 2 pages, then yes, there will be a part 2. But we'll talk about what net worth really is. It's seen a steady climb, not just due to the capital flowing in, but also because of the increasing equity in the various companies that I have ownership in. And not just, I don't mean as an investor for Backstage, I mean this is all personal, what I'm talking about. So my owning a majority piece of Backstage Capital itself, the management entity, owning the majority of HireRunner.co, owning a lot of IP, so intellectual property, that is what's adding to the net worth going up. The expansion of my footprint and the continuous creation of new and intellectual property has further solidified my financial standing. I will remind you as often as I possibly can that I'm continuously pouring any money I make into my companies and into the things that I want to see in the world. And I don't necessarily believe that the way that I have run my life and my finances is how everyone should. I think it's not for the faint of heart, and I think it's very specific to what I do. I believe in risk taking. I believe in putting your money out into the world and thinking of things over long term. So I do things and make decisions that a lot of people would not make. So that's all to say that I'm not rolling in the dough. I really am not. I have it, I earn it, I generate it, and then it's spent or it's given away or it's utilized, invested in a different way. So the journey of my first personal million was marked by dedication, strategic financial decisions, and a commitment to diversifying my revenue streams. It was also accompanied by a lot of heartache. The foundation laid between 2015 and 2018, the momentum gained between 2019 and 2021, and now the continued growth in 2022 and 2023 showcase a trajectory characterized by resilience, innovation, and authenticity. Resilience, just getting through day by day, still to this day, this morning, waking up and saying, I can get through today. It's not going to be easy, but I can do it. And I have to, I must. Innovation, constantly thinking of ways to not be dependent on the whims of the world and what could fall through. Today, I received an email from someone that I was expecting. I'm going to just, again, if you've spaced out a little bit, come back to the screen. I received an email from someone that I was expecting, asterisk next to the word expecting, approximately $500,000 to seed a company that I own from, who told me in a short email that they were no longer going to do that without explanation. And the reason I put an asterisk next to expecting is because the moment I put that out into the world and we were having the conversation, because of what I've learned over the past decade, I did not hang everything on that. I used innovation to say, how many different ways, what other ways can I generate that same 500,000 if this person doesn't come through, or if this entity, this company does not come through? And thank goodness I did that, because when I got that email, which I was already expecting after a little bit, I was like, oh, okay, bet. At least I don't have to share my winnings with you then. Cool, let's go. Everything happens for a reason. So I was not meant to be that I had that particular partnership. And the way I could be okay with that, 500,000, losing 500,000, quote unquote, is that I did not just rest on, oh, it's going to happen. Somebody else is going to make it happen for me. The same thing goes the other way. My wife made fun of me on a podcast a couple of years ago, because when we on Backstage, when we raised $5 million or $6.5 million in 8 days on Reg CF for our management entity on Republic. But the first thing we did was raise $1 million in 8 hours on the first day that we put this out. And then there was like 4 weeks for the SEC to look at it, and then we raised the rest. So that day when I desperately, and I don't like using that word, but just for the narration, needed that capital for Backstage to pay the bills and to pay the salaries of the Backstage members at that time, 1 million was just like incredible. And it happened in 8 hours. And my wife made fun of me because she's like, you were just not excited. You weren't freaking out. You weren't doing anything different than you did the day before, the day after. And she kind of asked me why. And I said, because I'm this even keeled on the dip. I want to be this even keeled on going higher, right? I don't just say words that I think will sound good. I really believe that money is just a tool. I really believe that we should not have a relationship with money. We should not have any emotional ties to money. That way, the success in this defined way continues happening. And then authenticity. I guess the story I just told kind of proves that. Like, I'm not going to. I posted on Instagram today a tweet from 2015, from January 2015, that I wrote, I believe. And it said that there's nothing that anyone could give me or take from me that would stop me from being 100% authentic. And I put the caption just said the word still, STILL, period. Because there's not. So that's what got me here. And will hopefully continue to take me much further, because I want to go much, much further. And of course, I've made more than $1 million at this point, personally. And I will use those skills to keep going. Like I say, the reason that most of you are here is because you watched a video of me saying or read something where I said that being a millionaire can be taught. That skill can be taught. It can be taught once, and then it needs to be taught over and over again. And that's what this is. This is what Spark program and Inner Circle is about. So with an upward moving net worth and a continued focus on creating, expanding, and I should say the being okay if my net worth went down or if I lost it all tomorrow, I'm going to knock wood. That helps too. The future is poised for even more significant milestones. Now let's look at what's next. This is exciting to me. So 2024 to 2030, I will be 43 to 50 in that time period. So of course I'm looking at it like that. This is when you'll start to see many of the seeds planted in my first 42 years, especially the past decade, really start to pay off. Partnerships and collaborations nurtured over the past decade will start to produce results like they have never before. And I know this because of studying hundreds of millionaires and billionaires, studying. It's wonderful to be able to go back, for instance, and see where Mark Cuban was at 42. It's wonderful to go back. I used to do this with Oprah and Ellen, and not to compare myself and say, I need to be at this age, but just to say, where were they 20 years ago? Where were they 50 years ago? Where were they 7 years ago? To me, it's not about being the exact age of the people. It's just about saying, where were they and where are they now? And not just looking at where they are now and like that success. I do the same thing with someone like a Steve Harvey, Tyler Perry. It's really an interesting thing to do. And so I know that the partnerships, I just know are just based on what happens. For me to even be in the position to have a $500,000 potential investment for something that I'm doing on my own is a testament to what can happen in just a few years. When this morning I was looking through old photographs because I was looking for something, and I stumbled upon a video of me at the San Francisco airport in July of 2015. My video was to Anna, who is now my wife, who was my internet girlfriend at the time, because we had not met yet. And I was telling her, I'm at the airport, it's midnight, I don't know how long I'm going to be here tonight, but it's, going to be a long time. And then I watched as video after picture after video after picture, the dates just added up of me being at this airport and living at this airport. And now 8 years later, I have my second book coming out. I have this book here. It's About Damn Time that I'm pointing to. I have this book here, and the Anti-Racist Business book, which I wrote the foreword to, that came out last year. Multiple books on this shelf I'm mentioned in or have written in. It's insane, right? But it can happen. It's a testament. So I know if that is what happened in the last 8 years, I know that the next 8 years will be very interesting and exponentially, most likely, rewarding. I will be invited to more and more high quality, high value deals that have a shorter distance to ROI. And where I say I, the word I, just say I for yourself. I'm saying you. That means that you are already so far ahead of so many people in the way you operate and the way you think and the way you play this game of life, that when I'm saying these years for me, I'm meaning for you too, right? So I will be invited to more and more high quality, high value deals that have a shorter distance to ROI. I think that's really exciting. And speaking of ROI, some of the investments I made through Backstage personally, mostly through Backstage though, so that I can share it with everyone else, will explode in value. Some of them will. We've invested in 200 plus companies. The statistics for that, usually in the startup world, is like 60, 70% go under over 3 to 5 years. That's a lot when you have that large of a portfolio. Most people don't have that large of a portfolio, so therefore they don't see that many losses. But then the statistics say that about 20% will return 1x and kind of will be okay, will be very, life-changing for the founders, for sure. And then the ones that went under, maybe that was just they needed to go under so they could make the next company work or make the next part of their next chapter work. Then there are 10% statistically, 10%, so 20 or so of our companies thus far who will have statistically astronomical returns and return more than the entire portfolio. And so if you think about 20, 25, 30 companies over the next 7 years, 8 years, 2 or 3 companies a year having explosive growth, or maybe it takes another couple of years for that to start, but then it's like boom, 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 fireworks in the sky. That's going to be interesting. And people are going to have their opinions of my portfolio, which they have. They're going to have their opinions of my investing acumen, my portfolio quality, my choices, and how I run backstage. They're going to have all those opinions. And then the day that something breaks in a good way is the day that I'll be a genius in their eyes. They'll say all this stuff, and then I'll be a genius in their eyes, which I will laugh at both. That's why I'm able to survive this. I will laugh at both. My proximity, listen to this, my proximity to successful and well-known people will get closer and closer, opening opportunities that I have not even dreamed of yet. I was so surprised this year to have outreach from several people who I would have either grown up adoring or more recently just became enamored with and really impressed with. One example, I won't say most of them because they are private, but one example I'll give you is working in proximity with Jodie Comer, who is an Emmy winner, a BAFTA winner, and now a Tony winner from England, who was in Killing Eve. I watched Killing Eve, binged it with my wife last year in our theater room. During COVID, we watch it, almost every night because we stumbled upon it, finally got with the program. Absolutely posted about her. I said I did not know any actor today that I felt was more compelling than Jodie Comer. Less than a year later, I was working with Jodie Comer this spring on her one-woman play that she won a Tony for. These things continue to happen, and they happen more often now. As the years go on, there's more that happen in a shorter amount of time, and the proximity I have to people is closer, and therefore they tell other people, and then they get in touch, and then they make more offers and have more opportunities. And of course, I put myself in rooms. I've been doing that since day one, and this is why I'm here now, to benefit from that. So just think through some of the things that you have done, some of the events you have gone to recently, or the money you have paid even for this program, or the investment of time, or anything else you've done recently. Think about what that ROI could look like over the next 6-7 years. It's exciting and inspiring.